Thank you for joining us on Leaving a Mark, where I fondly look back on the things that made me a wrestling fan my whole life. Have we got a big show for you tonight? Now, I know last week I said that I would start a series about Magnum TA. We're gonna put that off for 1 week since the WWF announced a change to they announced an entirely new U.S. title belt. Plus, Magnum was a big part of the U.S. title picture when I was first a wrestling fan. By the way, my name is Nathaniel Meir. I'm the movie editor at AIPT, and I'm a longtime wrestling fan who knows his stuff, especially when it comes to odd facts about secondary titles. Here are 5 odd facts about the United States Heavyweight Championship. After 17 years, the WWE finally created a new US title belt. It's better, I guess, but it really was not that great to begin with, so it's kind of like complimenting a homeless person on their tan. The biggest thing that stands out is the word champion. Literally, the thing is huge. The current version of the US title goes back to 1975. Don't believe me? Michael Cole always mentions how it goes back to Harley Race. Now, towards the waning years of WCW, the title was killed of any prestige it once had. WWE has actually shown flashes of bringing it back to its former prominence since reactivating it. I'm thinking of the John Cena Open Challenge every week. That was really cool. Unfortunately, and unsurprisingly, it has mainly let it fall into the same level of I forgot he was the champion importance as their Intercontinental title. The title, though, it does have an interesting history. Here are those 5 odd facts about the United States title.
His opponent, the current U.S. Heavyweight Champion from Minnesota, Ric Nature Boy Flair.
In my most recent edition of A Mark's Eye View, I discussed surprisingly patriotic wrestlers. One of the names I talked about was Ric Flair. The Nature Boy is synonymous with world titles. Not only has he won more world titles than anyone in the history of the sport, he also had world title reigns that lasted for years. No matter how many world titles someone wins in the modern wrestling landscape, no one will ever be able to accomplish what the Nature Boy did. His US title reigns are a different story. While he did have one run with the belt that lasted most of 1978, his normal reigns were an average of 2, maybe 3 months. That's a far cry from world title reigns that would last 2 to 3 years. Much like the world title, no person has actually held the US belt more than Ric Flair has. Much like the world title became in the 1980s, the United States title strap was synonymous with Flair from the mid-70s until he did win his first world title. There's actually a random reign in 1996 that put him over the top. It was actually the second longest. Lex Luger has held the title longer than anyone else by far, but the number of times Flair won the belt, along with the world title victories, is very impressive.
So as far as I'm concerned, there are no champions.
It can be seen as a commentary on how wrestling has changed, or it can be an argument for the NWA versus WCW, or it just might be sheer coincidence. But the United States title was a lot more stable in its first 20 years. The title was declared vacant only 6 times during that period. Once the company became WCW, things became a little more shaky. It took only 7 years for it to be vacated as many times as it had been in the first 2 decades. In 2000 alone, it was vacant 3 times. That's definitely a statement about WCW. Titles being vacated are part of wrestling. Injuries, people leaving promotions, sometimes the storylines require it. Fans are willing to accept when these things happen. unless they happen with every other title holder. One of the best things about wrestling is when one of our favorites overcome their hated rival and win a title at the same time. There's a sense of satisfaction that a tournament, and especially a battle royal, they're just unable to replicate. 6 times in 20 years? That sounds about right. An average of more than once a year? That's a lesson in how to devalue a title.
Roddy Piper is the new United States Heavyweight Champion!
Trying to figure out the history of any belt associated with the NWA is incredibly difficult. And that's even before all the nonsense with the WCW and the NWA World International Championship of New Japan got involved. To try to get into all the intricacies of the United States title would require research, lawyers, and a whole lot of headaches. For the sake of everybody's time and my own sanity, I'm going to make this as simple as possible. Basically, a bunch of territories had their own version of the United States title. It does not sound too difficult on the surface. After all, there are multiple world titles around today. The difference is those world titles are with different promotions. In 1981, there were different versions of the NWA United States title. I understand how the territory structure worked, and I know why it was around for so long. I also think it was great for wrestling fans, and it helped build stars that, quite frankly, just wouldn't have cut it on the national platform. What I don't get is how the sanctioning board of the NWA would allow a title with the same name to be defended in different parts of the country, different territories, and held by different people. Especially considering some of the stories of pettiness that surround the group. Yeah, I get it. There was no national television at the time. So naturally, they thought that the fans would never find out, since all wrestling promoters think that fans are marks and idiots. So instead of a US title and an American title and a national title, which is what some promotions did because it makes sense, we get stuff like the NWA World Tag Team Champions Mid-Atlantic version, or the Florida US Tag Team Champions. In the early 80s, wrestling promotions started to fold, finally leaving an undisputed United States champion. You might have heard of him, Roddy Piper.
This man, look out, here he comes, the single!
I wrote about this once in a Mark's Eye View, but the NWA had a lot of titles floating around the promotion in the mid-80s. The World title, the World Tag titles, the US Tag titles, the Mid-Atlantic titles, the TV titles, the Six-Man titles, the Brass Knuckles, Junior Heavyweight, Women's US. The list goes on and on. Being a champion is a whole lot less special when every single person seems to have a belt. Now, along with the US title, there was also the national title. What was the difference between the two? Who knows? Apparently the NWA did it, so they decided to unify the two belts. Nikita Koloff beat Wahoo McDaniel to get rid of all that confusion. The national title disappeared until finally being brought back in 2018. So far, there are no plans to bring back an NWA US title.
Ladies and gentlemen, this event is for the United States Heavyweight Championship.
Rick Steiner, Scott Steiner, Greg Valentine, Barry Windham. What do all these men have in common? They, along with one other person, held both the US and US tag team belts. The final person? Michael Hayes. There's no denying that Hayes is an important part of wrestling history. The Fabulous Freebirds are one of the most influential teams ever, and Hayes is a big reason why. What also can't be denied is that Buddy Roberts and Terry Gordy brought the ring work, while Hayes was just mainly the mouthpiece. Look at their UWF run where Hayes was a commentator and manager the whole entire time. And as awesome as he was on the stick, Purely Sexy was barely passable in the ring. On the surface, it doesn't seem like that big of a problem. Plenty of stars got by mostly on charisma. And in the 80s, this was even less of an issue. They could be managers, like Hayes had been, or there were tag teams to help out the less talented people, kind of like Hayes was a part of. Hayes was charismatic, but he could only do so much in singles competition. And his shenanigans, they quickly wore thin in a singles match, which is why giving him a major singles title would be a huge mistake. But that's exactly what the NWA did in 1989, the year that Ric Flair, Terry Funk, Rick Steamboat, and the Great Muta were tearing up rings all around the country. The man Hayes beat, Lex Luger, the person who repeatedly came within a whisker of capturing the world title in 1988. The win made no sense, and Hayes would lose the title back to the total package within 2 weeks, making it even more strange. It was short and unmemorable, but it also put Michael Hayes in very exclusive company. And yes, I'm sure I forgot someone. If you know of anyone else who held the US title and the US tag titles, put it in the comments below. And there you have it. 5 odd facts about the United States title. Next week, I will really begin my series on Magnum TA. What did you think of the new US title? Let me know in the comments below. If there's anything that you'd like for me to cover, let me know in the comments below. Until then, we'll see you next week. Support for Leaving a Mark is brought to you by Manscaped. They are the best in men's below-the-belt grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. I'll be honest, I've never thought of taking care of myself down there. Recently, I purchased the Lawnmower 3.0 from Manscaped. With one use, I realized how much I'd been missing. They've actually redesigned their electric trimmer. The Manscaped engineering team spent 18 months perfecting the greatest pubic hair trimmer ever. It's a 3rd generation. The trimmer reduces any manscaping accidents that you may be worried about, so don't worry, it works really well. They claim the battery lasts up to 90 minutes, and I can tell you firsthand that is absolutely the case. You'll feel a whole lot smoother, a whole lot fresher, and a whole lot cleaner. You can actually get 20% off and you get free shipping if you use the code AIPT20 and you go to manscaped.com. They have a variety of products that can help you below the belt. And again, you get 20% off and free shipping if you go to manscaped.com and use the code AIPT20.